what I also wanted to talk about was I was approached on that very last trip that I did. Actually, not the last one, but the one before that. It was a DCA to LA. It's actually LA to DCA and then DCA back. And the flight attendant, the number 4 flight attendant, was a young man who approached the captain and I and said, "Hey," he starts asking questions while we're checking into the hotel. Up there, I forget what he was asking, but something to do with the flight. And after about the second question, I'm like, "So are you interested in getting into aviation?" And his eyes lit up. He's like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" I'm like, "Well, usually when somebody asks a couple questions in a row, and most flight attendants they just don't give a shit." Honestly, they're like, "Yeah, whatever. You guys don't do anything up there and read the paper and drink your coffee." Yeah. It's like, so the fact that you're asking these kind of questions show that you're interested. How far are you into your exploration of this journey in aviation? And he goes, "Well, I've been a flight attendant for 5 years, and I'm starting to do my research, and I want to take lessons somewhere and get started and hopefully one day fly for Legacy Airlines." And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful." So we started to talk, and a lot of the questions he asked reminded me of a lot of the questions that we get as aviators when we meet somebody new, especially younger people. How do I get into aviation? And, Roger, I've got you on the show. You've been instructing for a long time in a various amount of degrees of the type of students you've had.
Sure.
From first timers to people that are getting behind the stick of a King Air and flying around a turboprop. So what advice would you give to someone who comes up to you and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting in aviation. What should I do?"
Well, that's kind of a loaded question that probably has, a few follow-up questions, if you will. The first of which I think that's something to consider is, are you looking to do this as a career, or are you looking to do this in terms of a hobby? There's a lot of different options in terms of flight training. I think there's probably some fewer options now, just with the consolidation of a lot of things. And a lot of it also, in my opinion, is going to be personality driven and what you think is going to work best for you. And the primary thing that I'm referring to in terms of that is, how fast do you want to do it? And do you want to have something be a little bit harder, or do you want to have something be more at a go at your own pace? Because I think that definitely the fastest way to do something in the most structured and the most airline type training environment is going to be one of your Part 141 schools, where they're going to pretty much draw everything out for you and a lot of these schools now, they'll take you from 0 hours all the way up to your flight instructor, where you're going to get your commercial certificate, you're going to get your multi-engine certificate. And a lot of these places also, depending where you go, will very well might hire you as a flight instructor in the same school. And you can do everything in one fell swoop. And for the people that there's two things to that. Those generally, in my experience, are going to cost a little bit more money, but they will also prepare you more for the airline training style and lifestyle, more so than the other option, which is your Part 61 or the quote unquote go at your own pace program. This is much more something that you can do as an a la carte kind of thing. You can do a lesson when you can fit it into your schedule. You're going to have the same flight instructor, because I think it's definitely good to keep the same instructor to the best extent possible for each rating. But you can work it into the schedule that you're working with at the time. This will probably take you a little bit longer, but it's going to be something I think that's a little bit more comfortable and more at the go at your own pace kind of thing. And I think that which program is best for you is going to differ from person to person. I kind of did a little bit of both programs personally. I did all of my stuff. I did the beginning stuff, Part 61, because I was going to school. I was in college at the time. I think I've mentioned that on the show before. And so I needed something with the flexibility, and I could fly a smaller airplane, and the smaller airplane and an older airplane that are typically found at your Part 61 is going to cost less money than a Cessna 172 SP or a Diamond Star or even a Cirrus. You know, you're probably talking about half the cost of an hourly rental. Whereas a lot of these 141 schools, you're going to fly better equipment. I won't, you know, it's going to be better, nicer equipment. And better does not necessarily equate to safer. I want to make sure, I want to put that caveat in there. Better does not mean safer in this instance. And so I did everything kind of on my own until I graduated from college. And then I knew that I was going to get into this as a career. And then I did the ATP program, which, while not 141, is very structured. You get X amount of hours to make it to your multi-engine. You get X amount of hours to make it for your instructor, for each stage of your instructor, which for me worked out okay because I guess, for lack of better terms, I was prepared for it. I was ready for it, and I didn't struggle with it. But for some people, they might need more than 5 hours in order to get ready for a check ride. But under some of these programs, you're going to go for your check ride whether you're ready or not, because that's what the next program lesson cost entails. Right. That's what it is. And so depending on, and that's something that each individual, I think, is going to have to decide for themselves. What's going to work better is to kind of look at the pros and the cons to each, and how it's going to work for each person individually, because each way will get someone that really wants it, will get them to the finish line. It's just how you want to go about doing it. My big thing, make sure, aviation is a rather expensive mistress, and make sure that it's something that you want, because once you put the money into it, you're probably going to be spending $200 just to get the first hour, your 1 hour of instruction. Yeah. By the time you're doing 150 for an airplane and a 50 for an instructor, and that adds up really quick. Make sure that it's something that you're committed to and you're ready to do, because it's expensive, but it's also fun. Make sure you're committed to it, I think those are kind of the main thoughts that I have in terms of training.
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of starting out Part 61. I did the same. And I think that was a huge cost savings for me, because I went through at the time, the King School, the Cessna program, and I did everything, all my ground schools online. I had a CD-ROM, a diskette, and then I had to upload it and print out the certificate that I completed that coursework and send it in after my actual flight training with my instructor, and they would review what the lesson entailed, and then we'd go out and physically do that in the aircraft. It was a self-paced program. It worked out financially to be a absolute minimal cost to me. And I really got my feet wet without committing right away to a big program where, it's going to be more regimented and
that's the other issue with those 141 schools, is it is it's an upfront commitment instead of the pay as you go, if you will, that you were just talking about.
Yeah, because they'll tell you, you'll save $20,000 if you do the whole program, pay for the whole program right now. And here we have
you make
lenders.
It through.
Right. And I know probably 40% of the people that went when my 141 school that I went to that didn't finish it. They just said, it's too expensive, or it's not for me, and try to get their money back or whatever. My suggestion is always start out very slow, doing the homework, doing the research. Hanging out at the airport, go to the local FBO, ask questions, ask to get it, and don't sign anything. Don't sign up for it. Just ask questions. Go online, and there are plenty of books. I just looked up online. You don't have to go and buy the Jeppesen Complete Guide to Private Pilot course, which is like an $84 textbook that has everything in it. You can go with a more inexpensive book, the Complete Private Pilot, the ASA book. That's $19.99. Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, a little dry book, but in terms of terms. AOPA.org is a great organization. They have a segment of their website that's open to anyone. You don't have to be an AOPA member to look at their flight training section, but they have some very limited programs there that you can participate in. So there's plenty of opportunity out there. There's a private pilot kit by Aircraft Spruce for $136, and it has like 5 books, an E6B, a little flight bag, a pilot log book, all the little nuances that you might need at the beginning. For relatively cheap, you can start at least your technical knowledge, getting familiar with terms, things like that. I've always said that aviation is like learning 4 foreign languages at the same time. You have the foreign language that might be foreign to you about aeronautics, which you're going to have to understand and comprehend. Then you have the term of systems of the airplane. How does the airplane work? How does the airplane fly if you turn the power off? Doesn't the engine die? No, it doesn't. Why? Okay, I'll explain. So then you have the terms of the ATC and instruments and radio frequencies. And then you have the term of talking on the radio. And then we haven't even scratched the surface with the weather and everything else. I mean, these are all aeronautical terms, but there's a lot going on. And it's just a plethora of knowledge. And it's a wonderful thing to get into. And to find out how committed you are, I always say, make a goal, set a goal and a time frame to work on a private pilot license, and find out if financially you can do it. And if you can do it by paying cash as you go, even better. That way you can stop at any time and you don't feel obligated to continue. And that's, if you get your private pilot license and you're like, that's it, I'm hooked, I'm done, this is it, this is a career for me. Whether you want to do it as a hobby, maybe buy your own airplane someday, fly GA the rest of your life, or if you want to fly freight and be the next Amazon Prime pilot or FedEx or UPS or whatever, or you want to fly for a major airline. Either way, it all starts at the beginning. You just have to get your foot in the door. You just have to ask a lot of questions. And we've said it before, a flight instructor is key. Don't just go for your first, oh, I'm your flight instructor. Oh, okay. I've had issues, especially at the beginning. I went through a few. We just didn't jive, and that's okay. But there's plenty of ways to get into aviation. And we here at Squawk Ident love the idea that we are getting at least that spark going for some young aviators, talking about all the stories we've had experienced on the flight line. And if it can help clarify anything, that's what we're here for. So give us your feedback.